She cheated with my boss, Tim, right before our wedding. Then he falsely claimed I stole $200, $0 from our joint account to cover up their affair. And now he's suing me for the property I inherited from my grandparents. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how I caught my wife cheating on me right before our wedding. Honestly, I'd always believed in the idea of forever, that we'd grow old together, maybe have a few kids and spend our lives building something real. But that illusion shattered in the worst way possible. It all started about 3 months ago. Things had been good, or at least I thought so. Lisa was her usual bitchy self, complaining about her job, about me not doing enough around the house, about how her friends were all better off. But she was also beautiful, smart, and she knew how to make me laugh when I was down. I was pretty much head over heels, and I thought she was too. Then slowly, I began noticing strange things. She'd be on her phone more than usual, hiding her screen when I got close. She'd leave her phone around but then act surprised and annoyed if I tried to look at it. She'd get calls late at night and quickly hang up. At first, I chalked it up to work stuff or her being paranoid about her privacy. But deep down, I felt a gnawing suspicion. One day, I decided to check her phone when she went to bed early. I didn't mean to snoop, but I was just curious. What I found made my stomach drop. There were dozens of texts between her and Tim. Yeah, that's her boss. Secret messages, flirty emojis, and even a few explicit texts about meeting up. The worst part, they'd been doing this for months. I saw messages where she was calling him babe, saying she couldn't wait to see him and how she loved the way he made her feel. There were photos, too, her in sexy outfits and a few of them together, clearly taken at some hotel or private place. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I was supposed to marry, was cheating on me with her boss, Tim. I felt numb. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind, or did I ignore all the signs? I remembered the late nights she'd say she was working late, the excuses she made for missing our dinner plans, and how she'd get defensive when I asked about her phone. All of it suddenly made sense. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept calm for a few days. But I couldn't ignore the evidence. I kept replaying everything in my head, feeling betrayed and furious at the same time. How could she do this? Right before our wedding, no less. I was supposed to be walking into a new chapter, and instead I was drowning in lies and betrayal. When I finally confronted her, it was like walking into a storm. I told her I knew everything. She tried to deny it at first, acting all innocent, saying I was crazy, that I was paranoid. But I showed her the messages. Her face twisted and she started lying her ass off, saying Tim was just a business acquaintance, that they never did anything, that I was overreacting. She even had the nerve to say I was insecure and jealous. But I was. I wasn't jealous of Tim. I was furious that she had lied to me for months, that she'd been screwing around right under my nose. I felt sick. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever trust her again. It was like she'd been living a double life, and I was just the fool who didn't see it coming. That night I couldn't sleep. I was angry, hurt, and confused all at once. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I let her get so close, how she could betray me like this. I thought of everything we'd built, all the plans for the wedding, the future I'd envisioned with her. And now it was all falling apart because of her lies and her affair. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her get away with it. But I also knew I needed a plan, something cold, calculated, and precise. Because if she thought I was just going to accept this and move on, she was dead wrong. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, especially not after cheating on me with her boss and then gaslighting me about it. That's when I started planning. I didn't tell her I knew everything. I wanted to see how far she'd go, how deep her lies would get. I had to gather more evidence, figure out her next move, and decide what I was going to do about the property she was trying to claim from my grandparents. I knew she thought she could manipulate her way out of this mess, but I wasn't going to let that happen, not without a fight. I'll tell you more about what I did next, how I turned the tables, and what happened when I finally decided to strike back. But for now, I just want to get this all out. It's been a nightmare and I'm still trying to process it all. If you want me to keep going, just say the word. After I found out about Lisa and Tim, everything changed. I couldn't just sit around and let her keep lying to my face. I knew I needed a plan, something airtight, something that would expose her for good, and maybe even give me some leverage to get back what's mine. She thought she was so clever, playing her little game of seduction and lies, but I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. First thing I did was go through her phone again. I wanted to be sure I had everything. I downloaded all the messages, saved the photos, and even set up a little hidden recording device in our bedroom. I didn't want to miss anything. I had to be meticulous. This wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about making sure I had solid proof to back up whatever I decided to do next. While I was digging through her stuff, I also started paying attention to her routines. She was acting more bitchy than usual, snapping at me over small things, acting like I was the problem. That was typical Lisa, always deflecting, but I could see the guilt behind her eyes. She was nervous, and that gave me a little edge. I knew she was hiding something, and I was determined to find out exactly what. Meanwhile, I also looked into her financials. I knew she'd been talking about some inheritance from her grandparents, an estate she kept saying was nothing special. But I had a feeling there was more to it. She'd been oddly secretive about the details, and I caught her lying about a few transactions, so I hired a private investigator. Yeah, I know it sounds extreme, but I wanted to know if she'd been funneling money somewhere, maybe even trying to hide the affair's fallout. While all this was happening, I kept my cool. I didn't confront her again immediately. Instead, I pretended everything was normal, waiting for her to slip up. I didn't want her to suspect I was onto her. I also started planning how I'd approach the property issue. My grandparents left me a sizable inheritance, some land, a house, some cash. Lisa had been making noises about wanting a bigger share, claiming she deserved it because we were building a life together. But I knew better. That inheritance was mine, and I wasn't going to let her take it just because she cheated. One night I caught her sneaking around her phone again. She'd gotten a new password, and I was about to break in when I saw her delete a message thread. That was a red flag. I decided to confront her then and there. I told her I knew about her affair, about Tim, everything. Her reaction was priceless. She looked genuinely surprised, then furious. She started crying, saying I was just jealous, that I was imagining things, that Tim was just a business contact she had to keep close for her job. I just stared at her. I'd heard enough lies. I told her that I had enough proof, that I was done playing her game. I told her that she had one last chance to tell me the truth, or I'd go to the authorities about her stealing from me and the inheritance. She looked panicked, trying to deny everything, but I knew better. I had everything recorded, saved, and ready to go. That's when I decided I'd had enough of her manipulations. I sat her down and explained that I was planning to take control of the situation. I told her I'd call the bank, see what transactions had been made in our joint account, and I was going to make sure she didn't get away with stealing a dime. I also told her I was going to sue her for the inheritance. She had no claim over that property, especially not after what she'd done. The next day, I went to my bank and pulled all the records. Sure enough, I found several suspicious transactions, large sums moved without my authorization. I called the bank, froze the account, and started filing reports. I also contacted a lawyer about the inheritance. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she threw at me next. Lisa's reaction was pure chaos. She accused me of ruining everything, saying I was just trying to control her, that I was paranoid. She kept lying, trying to spin her stories, but I had enough. I knew her game now. She thought she could manipulate her way out of this mess, but I was ready for her. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money, my property, or my dignity. While I was doing all this, I also made sure to document everything: the suspicious transactions, her texts, her calls, her reactions. I wanted to be prepared for a fight, whether in court or just in life. I knew she'd try to spin this against me, make me look like the bad guy, but I had the evidence, and I was determined to stand my ground. By the time I had all my ducks in a row, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally saw her true colors, and anger because she'd hurt me so badly. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine, standing up for myself after being by her lies. I'm not sure what will happen next, but I know I won't let her get away with this. I've learned a lot about trust, betrayal, and what it means to stand up for yourself. If you're ever in a similar situation, just remember, you don't have to take it lying down. Fight for what's yours, and don't let anyone tear you down without a fight. Once I had all my evidence and plans in place, I knew I couldn't just sit around and wait for her next move. Lisa was unpredictable. She was the type to double down on her lies or try to spin her way out of everything. So, I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with everything ready to blow her cover wide open. I scheduled a meeting at a neutral place, coffee shop, of all things, so she wouldn't feel cornered at home. I wanted her to think I was just having a normal talk. But really, I was ready for a showdown. When she showed up, her makeup was perfect, her attitude was bitchy as usual, and she was trying to act like she had everything under control. I started the conversation casually, asking about her day, her work, trying to keep her off balance. Then, I brought up the bank transactions. I pulled out my phone and showed her the records I'd gotten from the bank, pointing out the large sums that had been moved without my permission. Her face went pale for a second, then she tried to laugh it off, saying I was crazy, that I was just paranoid. That's when I dropped the bomb. I told her I had all the proof of her affair with Tim, including the texts, the photos, and the recordings I'd made. I told her I knew about the secret meetings, the late-night calls, everything. Her eyes widened and she started stammering, trying to deny it again, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I had her dead to rights. Her reaction was pure anger. She started yelling, calling me all sorts of names: jealous, insecure, controlling. She said I was just a boring guy, that she was only doing what she had to do to survive in her job. She even tried to guilt me, saying I was ruining her life and that she deserved better than this. But I didn't buy any of her lies. I told her I was done playing her game, that I was going to take her to court, get her out of my life, and fight for the inheritance she was trying to steal. I also warned her about the inheritance, how I had already contacted my lawyer, and we were preparing to make sure she got nothing from it. I told her she was going to lose everything, and she knew I wasn't bluffing. The look on her face was priceless. She knew she'd gone too far and her goose was cooked. As I sat there, I realized how much I'd been blinded by love and trust. I'd always thought Lisa was the one, but she turned out to be manipulative, selfish, and a liar. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger because she'd betrayed me so deeply, and relief because I finally saw her for what she was, someone who would do anything for money and power, even if it meant destroying my life. I told her I was done with her lies, that I was filing for divorce, and that I was going to fight her for what I deserved. I made it clear I wasn't backing down. She tried to argue, to say she loved me, that it was all a mistake, but I cut her off. I told her I didn't want to hear any more lies. I was done with her manipulations. After that meeting, I went straight to my lawyer's office. We drafted the paperwork for the divorce, and I made sure to include clauses about the inheritance and the property, making it clear I was claiming what was legally mine. I also planned to sue her for fraud and breach of trust, especially considering her affair with Tim and her attempt to steal from me. In the days that followed, Lisa's attitude got even more bitter. She started throwing tantrums, yelling at me, calling me names, trying to guilt-trip me into backing down. But I wasn't having it. I knew her tricks now. I stayed calm, focused on my legal rights, and kept gathering evidence. I also kept my distance, not wanting to give her any more chances to manipulate me. It was a rough few weeks. I felt betrayed, angry, and hurt, but I also felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was finally taking control of my life again. I realized I'd wasted too much time trusting someone who didn't deserve it. The property, the inheritance, the respect. I was going to fight for all of it. Looking back, I see how blind I was to her true nature. I thought I was building a future, but she was busy planning her own escape route with her boss. I learned that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to stand up and fight for yourself, even if it hurts. And honestly, I'm starting to feel like I'm finally free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, and the woman who thought she could get away with everything. After I laid everything out, proof of her affair, the bank records, the legal groundwork for the inheritance dispute, I thought she might finally crack. But Lisa, being the stubborn bitch she was, doubled down. She went into full meltdown mode, trying to spin it all around, claiming I was stalking her, that I was just jealous and that she'd never cheat on me. She even dared to say I was trying to control her life as if I was the bad guy. Her reaction only made me more determined. I knew she was trying to gaslight me to make me doubt what I'd seen and heard, but I'd already crossed the point of no return. I was done trusting her words. I had the evidence, and I was ready to take her to court if necessary. I knew she thought she could manipulate her way out of this mess, but I wasn't about to let her. That night I made a decision. I was going to confront her one last time, but this time with my lawyer present. I wanted everything out in the open, in front of someone who knew the law and could advise me on how to proceed. I called her and told her I'd meet her at her place with my lawyer to talk about everything. Her voice was defiant, but I could tell she was starting to realize she was losing control. When she showed up, she looked angry, her eyes blazing. I introduced my lawyer and we sat down. I started by reading her the list of everything I'd uncovered, her affair, the stolen money, the threats to my inheritance. I told her I had enough, that I wasn't going to let her destroy me or take what was rightfully mine. I explained that I was filing for divorce, and I was going to fight her for the property, the inheritance, and any assets she was trying to claim. She tried to interrupt, to deny everything again, but I held firm. I had the evidence, and I knew she couldn't deny it anymore. I told her that her lies wouldn't save her this time, and that I was prepared to go all the way to make sure she paid for her actions. Her face twisted into a sneer. She spat out that I was just a jealous, insecure man who couldn't handle a woman with a mind of her own. She said she'd ruin me, that she'd take everything I had if I dared to fight her. But I didn't flinch. I just looked at her and said, "Go ahead, try, because I have everything on my side now." The meeting ended with her storming out, furious and yelling insults. I stayed calm, knowing I'd done all I could. I left the house shortly after, feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. I'd finally taken control, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. Over the next few days, I finalized the divorce papers with my lawyer. We also filed a claim to block her access to the inheritance, citing her infidelity and her attempt to steal from me. I knew she'd try to fight dirty, but I was ready for that. I had all the evidence, and I was prepared to go to court if necessary. Meanwhile, Lisa was doing everything she could to turn the tables, calling mutual friends, trying to spin her story as if I was the villain. But I didn't care. I knew the truth. And I was finally starting to feel some sense of peace, knowing I was standing up for myself. One thing I learned through all this: trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start rebuilding. I realized I'd been blind, that I'd overlooked the signs because I wanted to believe in her. But now I see clearly. I see her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who only cared about herself and her ambitions. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the warning signs earlier, but I also know I can't change the past. All I can do now is move forward, protect what's mine, and learn from this nightmare. I've started to rebuild my life, piece by piece, stronger and more cautious than before. And honestly, it's a relief to finally be free from her lies and deception. The court date finally came sooner than I expected, and I was ready. All my evidence was organized, my lawyer was sharp, and I knew I had the law on my side. Lisa, predictably, showed up with her usual bitchy attitude, trying to look innocent but failing miserably. She thought she could bluff her way through it, but I had everything documented, every text, every bank record, every lie she'd told. When the judge called us in, I felt a strange mixture of nerves and relief. I'd never been in a courtroom before, but I knew I had to stand my ground. The proceedings started, and Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that her affair was just a misunderstanding, that she hadn't stolen anything, and that she deserved a fair share of the property because we were building a life together. It was all bullshit, and I made sure to counter every point with my evidence. I explained how I'd found her cheating with Tim, how she'd been lying about her finances, and how she'd been trying to manipulate the inheritance. I even brought out the recordings I'd made, which clearly showed her admitting to her affair and trying to justify her actions. The judge listened carefully, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. Lisa's face was red with anger and frustration. She kept trying to interrupt, claiming I was trying to ruin her reputation, but I stayed calm. I told the court about her theft from our joint account and how she'd been planning to run away with Tim's help. I also clarified that the inheritance was legally mine, given the circumstances, and that her claim was invalid because of her breach of trust. The judge looked at the evidence, then at Lisa, and finally made her ruling. She ordered Lisa to pay back all the money she'd stolen, including the $200, $0 she transferred, without my consent. She also awarded me full custody of the property I inherited from my grandparents, stating that Lisa had no claim after her betrayal and deceit. The court granted my divorce too, and Lisa's lawyer looked furious. When I left the courtroom, I felt exhausted but victorious. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had fought for my rights and I'd won. I knew Lisa would try to fight back, maybe appeal or threaten me with more lies, but I wasn't worried. I had everything documented and I was prepared for whatever she threw at me next. The aftermath was predictable. Lisa was bitter, trying to smear my name, but it didn't matter anymore. The court had spoken and the law had given me justice. I started the process of moving on, slowly rebuilding my life without her. I felt a strange sense of closure, knowing I'd fought for what was rightfully mine and that I'd come out on top. Most importantly, I learned a few hard truths. Trust is fragile and betrayal can come from those you love the most. But if you stay vigilant, gather your evidence and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, you can survive even the worst heartbreak. I realized I'd been naive, but I also learned that real strength comes from facing your pain head-on and fighting for your future. I've got a long way to go, but I'm finally free, and that feels damn good. After everything that happened, the betrayals, the court battles, the lies, I finally feel like I'm starting to breathe again. The house is quiet now, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of everyday life. I've moved out of the place Lisa and I shared, and I'm renting a small apartment nearby. It's not much, but it's mine, and honestly, that's enough for now. Looking back, I realized just how much I was blind to at first. I kept making excuses for her late nights, her secretive phone calls, her sudden mood swings. I thought love could cover everything, but it turns out love isn't enough when someone is actively betraying you. I should have seen the signs earlier, but I guess I wanted to believe in her too much. That's a mistake I won't make again. The biggest lesson I've learned is about boundaries. Trusting is important, but so is protecting yourself. I was naive to think that love alone could keep someone honest. From now on, I'll be more cautious, more aware. I'll never ignore the red flags again, and I'll definitely never let someone manipulate me into thinking I'm the crazy one for wanting honesty. I also learned that justice isn't always easy. It took months of fighting, gathering evidence, and standing my ground. There were moments I wanted to give up, to just walk away and forget everything. But I knew I owed it to myself to see it through. That's what finally gave me peace, knowing I did everything I could to take back control of my life. As for Lisa, I don't think she'll ever truly understand what she lost. She's still trying to spin her story, trying to make me out to be the villain. But I know the truth, and that's all that matters. I hope she finally realizes how badly she screwed up, but honestly, I don't care anymore. I've moved past her. I've learned to value myself, to respect my own feelings, and to stand up for what's right. Now I'm focusing on myself, working out, reconnecting with friends, and figuring out what I want next. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm better off without her. I've been through hell, but I've come out stronger. And I want anyone else out there going through something similar to know you're not alone. You can survive betrayal and you can rebuild. It's not easy, but it's worth it. So here I am, finally free. No more lies, no more secrets. Just me with a chance to start fresh. That's all I ever wanted. And honestly, I feel pretty damn good about it.